Hello and welcome. My name is James Wynn and I'm the Director of Business Development for Attorney Credits. For many of us, our mobile phones have become an essential tool for everyday living. Mobile search on these phones have become the dominant method for consumers to find services and goods online. According to a recent study by CNET, mobile internet traffic reached 60%, surpassing desktop internet traffic, which actually declined down to a 40% market share. And recently, according to Forbes magazine, 95% of smartphone users have accessed their phone to look up local information. And after doing so, incredibly, 61% actually called these local businesses. So you have to ask yourself, is your law firm ready to take advantage of these consumer trends? In today's webinar, we're going to explore what steps your law firm can take to immediately improve your mobile search rankings and improve user experience when they go to your website on their smartphones and tablets. To discuss this subject in greater detail, please welcome back Chris Dreyer. Chris, welcome.
Thanks, James. Glad to be here. So for those of you that don't know me, I've been doing SEO, I think, for around 14 years. It was kind of a funny situation where I was actually a history teacher at a high school, and I was doing the detention room to make a little extra money on the side, and I typed in how to make money online. I know probably the worst query you could possibly imagine, but I ended up taking a 30-day digital marketing course. And then from that, I ended up my second year making more doing affiliate marketing through SEO and inbound marketing than I was teaching. So I pursued it full time. At one point, I had around 100 websites that I was managing my own. I had a full team of affiliate marketers that I was managing, and essentially I started getting requests from businesses to do consulting for them, and that's where I got in the legal vertical. So I started consulting for a few law firms, and before I knew it, I was essentially creating my own legal marketing agency. And that's where I got my background. So I've been in basically every industry. I've been through all the different algorithm updates, the penguins, the pandas, the everything you can think of. And this is just another one that we're approaching. And it's not necessarily, something like a manual refresh where you're getting a penalty for doing something wrong. It's more so in preparation for a change to where Google is evaluating the mobile space first. So to get started, the reason this is so important is because consumers, as James said, are consuming mobile-based searches in a higher frequency. The other reason this is really important is because when an individual does a query on a mobile device, they're more likely to take action. They're in that bottom of the funnel mindset. And here is a study. This was a good article from Patrick Reinhardt on the Search Engine Journal, and this was produced from Stone Temple Consulting, where they found it was around 55% mobile search versus desktop. So we can see the gap is widening. Where James said, it's now up to 60%. It just continues to grow. It's because everyone has a mobile phone on them, and it's more important than ever. And Google has started to take notice of this. In fact, they started working on this in November of 2016. Now, there was an announcement from John Mueller, one of the top SEO individuals at Google, where he mentioned that they were working on a mobile-first index. And last year, they were trying to have it out by the end of 2017. Now there's been new advancements, new information, and now they say it's going to be in 2018. So we do know this is a major focus, and that's why it's so important, is because Google is going to start to evaluate your website and how it answers consumer queries based upon the mobile search presence and how it's set up for mobile friendliness, more so than on a desktop PC with larger resolutions. All of this should be coming very, very soon. And I will say this, there are things that we're going to talk about, things like accelerated mobile pages that you will already see having an impact on mobile search. And this is the biggest one. So the Accelerated Mobile Page Project, and you can get more information here at ampproject.org. Essentially what accelerated mobile pages are is you'll see a little lightning bolt next to a result when you do a query on your phone. These are more likely to rank better in the search engines. It's because they almost instantaneously load. Now, the issues with that for a law firm are it strips out a lot of your code and it really leaves it to the basics. So you're just going to have a lot of basic text. So things like heavy images and specialty built internal landing pages with lots of internal code, all of that gets stripped out and it just leaves it purely with the text. Now that does help with the speed. You're getting rid of a lot of unnecessary storage space, but it makes it very generic to look at. And one of the big problems we've had is doing this on, in my experience, is doing this on pages, your practice area pages or your pages as opposed to posts as it refers to WordPress. And one of the easiest ways that you can get this set up is there's a plugin. It's wordpress.org. It's called Glue for Yoast. And you can install this and it will help you make your blog. It will set it up with accelerated mobile pages. The only caveat that I would say is when you set this up, we've experienced a high number of crawl errors from AMP accelerated mobile pages based upon the clients that we've done this for. So it's absolutely essential that before you set this up, that you're set up with Google Search Console to measure those crawl errors and fix those immediately. You don't want to lose any link equity in terms of SEO to help you rank. And you also want to retain your visitors to your site. And you don't want them to go to a dead 404 page. So just be cautious when you set this up to look out for those crawl errors. And in my opinion, as of right now, I would only set it up for your blog, for your blogs. In the future, maybe they make some developments with this WordPress plugin to better utilize pages. But in the beginning, I would start with blogs, fix those crawl errors, and then make adjustments from there. We've had situations where we've had thousands of crawl errors, so it's just absolutely essential to get those fixed. And the reason AMP pages is so important is because speed is a ranking factor. Google has came out and said many times that there's the three main components of SEO are links. If you think of links, using the analogy, if you're trying to win an election, you want to get as many votes as possible. Think of those as like links. If you're trying to win the first page of Google, you want to get as many high quality links as possible, high quality, topical, and relevant. The second pillar being content. Think of it as like the opportunity. So in order, if you're a personal injury lawyer and you want more car accidents, you have to have a car accident landing page. If you want, TBI cases, slip and fall, whatever that focus is, you have to have a dedicated landing page that targets those keywords. I like to think of those as pillar pages, and every vertical or area of the law has these pillar pages. If you're criminal defense, it could be DUI, it could be sex offense, drug offense. Think of those as the opportunity. And then the third component is what Google refers to as rank brain. And rank brain, from my understanding, is essentially the user experience in answering consumer intent with your website and making it a mobile and a quality user experience for your consumers so that they can navigate to your site and they can get the information they need. And speed is one of those factors that they look at because an individual is more likely to leave your site if the page is going to load slowly. So there's a few things that you can do to look at your page speed as it affects to mobile. The first one you can do is you can go to Page Speed Insights. If you just Google Page Speed Insights, you can run this tool. Now, they do have mobile unavailable right now. They're making some changes, I guess, with the platform. However, if you click on desktop, these same recommendations, it's very likely that they will apply to the mobile version of your site. Things like minimizing and compressing images, that's, in my experience in the legal vertical, one of the biggest factors that's affecting speed. What happens is you'll have someone from your staff or potentially yourself or your SEO partner, when they go to upload a blog, they won't compress the image, and you'll end up with these gigantic high resolution images that slow down your site. And if an individual compresses those or saves those in a different format, it can have a huge impact. One of the things you can do is look at your media files to see the size of your images. That's one of the best things you can do. Some of these other things like, JavaScript and CSS above the fold and, minifying JavaScript, all of this stuff, it can be handled by a web developer. There's also some other components. I'm going to pop this open really quick. There's a site called bountify.co that I love this site because it helps you crowdsource issues. So if you're in a situation where you install that Yoast plugin by Glue, you can create a bounty for any issues that you're running into to have web developers answer your queries. Now, the great thing about this, and this is a little secret here, is every time you put your URL into the query, you get a backlink on this site. So it's kind of a dual incentive. Not only do you get exceptional information from actual developers to help you overcome whatever problem you're having. So whether that is an AMP problem, where you're getting crawl errors and they can suggest actions to take, or if you have a situation where you're trying to compress your site and you need a developer's assistance, you can create a task for any of those. And when you put your URL in, those pages and those bounties get indexed, so you get a backlink as well. So you get great information, and this isn't expensive. You're going to get all kinds of answers for $25. It's a great tool if you don't have a dedicated web developer on hand, or if you want to hold your current agency accountable. There's a few other things that you can do in Google Analytics, and you can jump in and you can see which destination pages are loading slowly. So there may be situations where you can identify those large images purely by looking at the behavior setting in Google Analytics. It will show you the page speed. Just be cautious about this, and I would say check this regularly, especially when making a lot of content updates to your site, because it can certainly help. So again, we talked about Google PageSpeed Insights, and again, it's just minimizing your images. There's also a great plugin. It's called WP Smush It that can help you compress images, and that can help solve those issues. The next component that we'll look at is local SEO. So in the last year or so, Google has they've been putting more preference or more of a factor on distance. And that's because everyone has a mobile device on hand. In fact, if you look at their improved local result listing on Google, one of the third or fourth items that they mention here, second actually, on how they determine local rankings is distance. So that's why you're running into those situations where, if you're not in the centroid of a location, it's much more difficult to rank in the free pack. And it's because mobile has put such it's pushed everyone into using distance more frequently because everyone has a mobile device on hand, and Google's taking that into account. They've even started to update their index. For example, you used to be able to get results from other locations by doing some incognito searches or setting your location to theirs. And they've done away with a lot of that, and it takes into account where the actual individual is. In terms of how that affects law firms, the one thing I'll tell you is sites like Regis and these virtual offices, if they're not meeting all the qualifications, there's a larger push to out these individuals. There's been several new articles. Conrad Sam from Mockingbird Marketing has put out some great articles about it. You know, there's been many individuals that have taken a stance against gaming local. So it's really important that it meets all the quality standards. And just to put that in perspective, there are individuals that there are cases where you can report that an office is virtual, and how Google wants you to confirm that it's relevant is they make you send signage and pictures of your building, and they even will meet at the location in some instances to see if it has a secretary on staff. So just be cautious of that. And you can see even in the last, let's see, January 7th of this month, there was a pretty large article put out by Joy Hawkins, which is one of the main thought leaders in the local space. And she basically calls out these virtual offices. And this is a detailed article on how to report them. So what I'm finding in my space in terms of digital marketing, I'm finding more and more businesses opening up to getting reported. And it's the same case why, you know, if you're trying to use a keyword in your name, for example, if your firm name's, you know, the John Smith Law Firm, and you practice criminal defense, you don't want to put the, you know, John Smith Law Firm criminal defense attorney, because that's in violations of terms of service. So they're cracking down more on local, and they're doing so by allowing instances of how to report these virtual offices. So just be very cautious if you're considering investing into virtual offices for more coverage. Another component of local SEO, and this all ties into mobile first index. Because distance is a huge factor, we know that information for your name, address, phone number is going to be absolutely essential. There's a few things to think about. First, when we think of NAP, that refers to as name, address, phone number. That's a huge signal for Google, and how they determine who ranks in the 3-pack is the number of local NAP citations you have across the web on prominent sites. One of the main issues that we've dealt with, and many individuals deal with, is sometimes your digital agency doesn't retain your usernames and passwords, or possibly you change your firm name or a phone number. It can be really difficult to update all of these. So the main thing I would tell you is there's a couple methods that you can tackle this. The first way that you can tackle it is there's a service called Yext. Yext Power Listings. It's around $500 to $600. We've talked about it before, but they have API access to all of these sites. Basically, what that means is they can kind of override the login issues because they have direct API access. So one of the easiest ways to fix your NAP is through Yext. I will say this about Yext though, and I do use Yext at our agency, but we're starting to move away from it a little bit because you are basically leasing and you're renting this power listings, and whenever that you quit paying for Yext, it resorts back to its original state. So you're basically renting continually, and you're on this subscription forever, and it can be really costly over time. So another solution that I've talked to is Darren Shaw over at White Spark. This is another one of the main prominent local services. He has a permanent solution that will help you with this name, address, phone number consistency efforts. It's relatively inexpensive, and it is a permanent solution. One other thing to mention about NAP consistency is there are 4 major aggregators: Localese, Newstar, Info Group, and Axiom. Yext only submits to 1, so you will have to use an alternative service to submit to the other 3 to get the most presence. And one of those sites is Moz Local. You just pop that open really quick. Moz Local, I believe, is around $120 per year. And just be cautious of that you know, you'll have to pay this on a regular basis. And I believe that Darren has a permanent solution. So there's a couple options for you. Bright Local also has an aggregator submission service, but Whitespark, from my understanding, is the only permanent solution that I'm aware of. So if you're trying to fix your name, address, phone number citations to help with your mobile presence, just be sure that you look into those aggregators and those types of sites. The next thing that Google will look at is your keywords on your landing pages. So when Google is trying to evaluate what the page is about, it's going to look at your keywords, your geography, the instances and number of times used, and the quality of the content. So one of the things that to be aware of is you want to target purchase intent keywords, meaning a geography, your legal service, plus the word lawyer or attorney. When someone types in Chicago personal injury lawyer, they're more likely to hire an attorney, and they're in that bottom of the funnel than if they're still in the research mindset. And if you're ranking for those on a mobile device, because actions taken on a mobile are more likely to convert to a lead, it's very important that your purchase intent keyword phrases are optimized for mobile. So take a look at your formatting, make sure you get a lot of the main call to actions up early in the content, and just make sure that your website doesn't scroll too long. In the past year or so, there's been a huge push for these parallax websites. And what we found personally from using, heat mapping tools like Crazy Egg, we found that sites with vertical scrollers, that after you go past a couple screens, no one's reading the copy. So just make sure that your call to actions and main information are up top, especially on a mobile device. Now, I do know that content and content quality and having long form content is certainly important. So, when you write long form content, it's in many cases because you naturally include related phrases and synonyms. So just be aware that you can create long form content, but just put the majority of the main focus at the top so that the individual can take action immediately, in particular on a mobile device. And also, if you do have that long form content, make sure to include multiple call to actions throughout the copy and not just one at the very bottom, because an individual may not see that based upon studies that we've seen from heat mapping tools. There's a few other links to start considering and to be aware of. So I'm sure you're aware of legal directories like Avo, Justia, FindLaw, Law Guru, eLocal Lawyers, sites like that. There's also social media directories like Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, About.me, Pinterest, that have an impact. But if Google, and this is purely theoretical, so I don't have any 100% proof on this, but if they're going to look at distance, I would start to recommend having a presence in GPS-based directories. Garmin, TomTom, MapQuest, sites like that certainly can have an impact on your mobile rankings. And one other one that's not mentioned here, and this is more of a local website directory, is Yelp. We found that in many cases, the Siri-based searches on a phone, the voice-based searches, Yelp has an impact on those. So just take in consideration those main local website directories which hold your NAP information, as well as some of these other GPS-based sites. And I can tell you the easiest way to make sure that you're in those is, again, Yex's power listing service. There are some GPS-based sites in here, and just take that into consideration because it will be a ranking factor, or it's very likely to be a ranking factor in the future. Another term that you hear quite a bit is mobile responsiveness. So basically that means that your site will conform to an appropriate form of technology. So if someone's on an iPad, it will shrink down to a resolution that's user-friendly on an iPad device, as well as mobile devices. There are things that you can do, and I'm going to try to do this on the webinar, and it's a little tricky, but let me see if I can get it for you. So let's just pop open a website. Let's just pop open Dolman Law. If you click the little double icon at the top, you can drag your device, and you can see what it will look like on different device settings. So when it's in full resolution, it'd be on a PC. You can get down to what it would look like on potentially an iPad. And to further move it, you could shrink it down all the way to a mobile device. It's an easy way to test your mobile friendliness without, loading up your phone. It's an easy way to test it purely from your PC. So you just click and drag, and that's a relatively easy way to do it. There's a few other things to mention about mobile responsiveness. So the first thing, when we are referring to mobile responsiveness, we are referring to one site and not having, .mobi type sites. So if you had a site built in the past, in some cases you may have a mobi your url.com. You really want to move away from that. It's going to save you on, hosting costs, and just consider updating it to a mobile responsive site. I'm a huge proponent of WordPress as the main CMS. Some of the other ones like Wix and Drupal and Joomla, that's not to say that they're not bad choices. They can be good choices. We've just found that the WordPress CMS is the most user-friendly and easy to navigate. There's a few other things that you want to take into account is you want to make it very easy to click on your elements on a mobile device. In particular, your phone numbers should all be set up for click to call. It's just a coding that you add to your phone numbers. Make absolutely certain on your practice area pages, your about page, your home page, all of those are set up for click to call. It just makes it easier for the consumer. They don't have to, copy your phone number, then insert it manually. And ultimately, the easier it is, the more likely it is to convert. There's a few other elements to watch out for. In some of the new live chat services, just be sure that the chat instances are not covering too much of the text. And in some cases, that can even cause a penalty, but just make sure that you test it. I know Apex and Engage, as well as Drift and Intercom, are some of the more popular live chat services. I know also that Apex has a click to text feature, which as we continue to go more and more into the mobile space, I think click to text is just another easy option for a consumer to get in touch with someone. So just take those into consideration, that you want to have click to text, you want to have larger font types, and you also want to make sure that everything, all your main call to actions are up at the top, so that there's no scrolling necessary on a mobile device, at least on the core information. The other thing that you want to make sure of in regards to that hiding the navigation are the pop-ups. So if you have an opt-in form for like an Infusionsoft campaign or possibly MailChimp, just make sure that those pop-ups on those timed intervals don't interfere with the mobile user experience. And overall, that's some of the main components. So now I'll just get into a couple instances where, to give you an idea of some situations that we've been dealing with. So the first instance I talked a little bit about was the application of Yoast by Glue to WordPress. So what we found was essentially you would get thousands upon thousands of crawl errors. And in Google Search Console, they now have an AMP crawl error section. And it's just absolutely essential that you take care of those mobile errors there and redirect those on a one-by-one basis. The Yoast support forum is pretty helpful for that. Again, the Bountify section is good for that as well. And you can identify drops in traffic through AMP if your Google Analytics is set up properly. And one other thing that I would like to mention that we found in our own case is when we've set up the Yoast plugin in analytics, oftentimes the traffic is labeled as referral traffic as opposed to organic. I'm hoping this gets fixed pretty soon, but just be aware that if you see spikes in referral traffic and not organic when this goes live, that's something to check out. The last thing that I didn't mention in regards to the Yoast, to the AMP plugins and setting that up on your site is be absolutely certain that you have canonical tags set up on your pages, because it will duplicate and double index your pages, and you want to make sure that one page is identified as the core page. So you'll want to set up a canonical tag on all your AMP pages. Now, I would just mention that to your developer, or check again with bountify.co. There's also a great site, if you're trying to look for subcontractor or freelancer option, there is upwork.com. There's also a site called Scale Squad that can assist with that. So guys, I know we're a little early in the webinar, but those are the core components. So I just want to go over them one more time, just from the top for any of those that came in late. So the first thing is mobile first index. It's coming. It was announced in 2016. It's going to be coming anytime in 2018. So just to get ahead of the game, mobile search is around 55 to 60%. Accelerated mobile pages, the easiest way to set them up if you're on a WordPress site is the Yoast plugin by Glue. Just be sure that you check for those crawl errors, because they most certainly will appear. So mobile is going to be one of the prominent ranking factors. And also page speed is a huge factor. Just be sure to check those image sizes. There's a plugin called WP Smush It that can help compress your images as a whole. Be very cautious of that. You can also check your page load speeds in Google. Another diagnostic tool is Google Page Speed Insights. It's going to give you all of the necessary information to make these speed reductions. If you have a developer on staff, you can make modifications to the CSS and JavaScript. Local SEO, again, it's distance is a main factor. They're cutting down on individuals that are gaming the systems with virtual offices. Just make sure that you're close to the centroid and set up as many local citations as possible. In order to get local citations, you can use Yext as a service. You can use WhiteSpark. You can use Bright Local. If you type in local website directories into Google, you're going to find a list of many sites. So those are certainly some services. Right now, I really like Yext if you have some map inconsistencies because of the API, and WhiteSpark is certainly a phenomenal permanent solution. Be sure those keywords are used so that you can rank for purchase intent keyword phrases, because those mobile searches are typically more likely to take action. Be aware of GPS sites. So TomTom, Garmin, Yext has a few of these. Be sure to MapQuest is another good one. Mobile responsiveness, this is a term that's been talked about a lot for the last few years, but it's just absolutely essential that you have a mobile first site that's responsive. You can drag the edges of your desktop to see if it's mobile responsive. Design for fat fingers. Make sure all of your phone numbers are set up with click to text or click to call. Be aware that if you're using Apex or any of these live chats, make sure that you check it manually to see that your pop-ups aren't hiding any of the text, because it could interfere with SEO and certainly the user experience. And guys, that's all I had for you. If you have any additional questions, I'm happy to help. My email is chris@rankings.io, and I'm happy to answer your questions. If you guys have any questions now, I'm happy to take them live.
So if anybody has questions, you can submit them in the Q&A tab on your dashboard and just text it in. And Chris would be happy to discuss any of the questions or topics you might have right now. And we go.
Yeah, we'll just wait for another couple minutes. If we don't get any questions, guys, or you want to ask me the question, in private, in email, I will answer all of your questions at chris@rankings.io. And, certainly if you need assistance with, setting up AMP, or you have some additional questions, I can help guide you on that. Even if we don't offer, maybe a service to convert your site to, mobile responsiveness, I can certainly point you in the right direction. So I'm happy to help, guys.
Chris, what are your thoughts on the WordPress templates out there for attorneys, for somebody who needs like a quick fix to get their site up and responsive?
Yeah, so there's a lot of great WordPress templates at ThemeForest, and they're relatively low cost. I would look at the ones that are frequently updated with support, that have constant, 2.0, 3.0 refreshes, and those that haven't been updated for quite some time, you want to avoid. Typically, those themes are the ones that have been bought several thousand times. The one thing that I would say, if you're converting from an HTML or a different CMS, is just make sure that you do your 301 redirects to preserve any link equity that you have. There's also low-cost solutions at 99 Designs. Design Pickle is another service. Scale Squad's got a relatively low-cost service to get you guys WordPress sites. Justia, I'll say this, they've done a great job. Their CMS is completely set up with AMP. So if you're considering Justia as a web platform, it's a pretty solid choice. The only downside to that is, and it may be an upside, is if you want to make major changes to your CMS, you'll have to go through a support forum. So the code and everything's not as accessible, but it is a very good option if you don't have an agency or a developer on hand in the legal vertical.
And have any of your clients ever discussed about if it was worth the investment to look into like an actual app versus just having a responsive website?
So we've seen some instances of apps. One of the main instances is for criminal defense attorneys for expungements. Some of those things that are more transactional or related can be good instances. I've seen some PI attorneys try to use apps, but to like document their accident, like step-by-step processes. But to be honest, I don't really see many consumers using apps like that. I could be 100% wrong, but in my experience, I haven't seen effective apps in the injury vertical, at least personal injury.
Chris, thank you so much for your time today. Well, that ends our webinar presentation. Thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great day.